In the mid-90s, I talked to a wide variety of people about religion. On tape, about 100 people or so, priests, nuns, ministers, professors, atheists, Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses. My goal was not to find out what they think, since I already knew that, but to debate issues with them, to make sure I wasn't missing some esoteric knowledge or attitude that might change my mind. Jim and Brian, Jehovah's Witnesses. Pacifism. The Jehovah's Witnesses refuse to serve in the military. We talked a bit about pacifism and the biblical basis for pacifism, Jesus' statements against violence.
This was after Peter had cut the ear off one of the men that came to arrest Jesus. And Jesus said to him, "Return your sword to its place, for all those who take the sword will perish by the sword."
Right.
Okay? Now, that was written nearly 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, so that's not going to change. Therefore, if we're going to live by the sword or the gun, then we're going to perish in that same manner.
He's contradicting himself when he told them earlier to get a sword.
Well, see, but again, it would be necessary to know why did they need a sword.
He didn't say for offense
He
or
was
defense.
he was correcting Peter for what he did use the sword for.
Yeah, but he told them earlier to get a sword.
True, but it wasn't for self-defense against another man.
Well, what was it for then? Cooking?
It was to defend themselves against the wild animals.
Well, you're reading that in there.
Poisonous.
You're reading that in there. He doesn't say anything about animals.
But it certainly wasn't for protection against other men, because Jesus didn't teach to live that way.
There is no suggestion at all that the swords were for defending against animals. The implication is clearly that they were for defending against the human enemies of Jesus and the apostles. And he who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. For I say to you that this which is written must still be accomplished in me. And he was numbered with the transgressors. People can be transgressors, not animals. Now, I suppose one could make the argument that Jesus wanted to make sure some prophecy involving violence and transgressors is fulfilled. But that seems pretty weird to me. Jesus advising that all who take up the sword will perish by the sword, yet advising the apostles to get swords, just to fulfill some Old Testament prophecy of being numbered with the transgressors. Why do you need a sword to be numbered with the transgressors? Wasn't overturning the temple tables enough for Jesus to be numbered with the transgressors? Not to mention that Old Testament prophecy is from Isaiah 53:12, which cannot be referring to Jesus, because that person was to divide the spoil with the strong. Jesus never divided spoils with anyone. Not to mention that Christians normally take the two thieves crucified along with Jesus as the specific transgressors he was numbered with, thus making getting a sword completely unnecessary to supposedly fulfill a prophecy.
That's what I find about the Bible. It's so muddled. It's not. If it were the book of God, it would be clear and accurate. It wouldn't be off the mark and overstating all the time.
Saying all who take up the sword will perish by the sword is an example of Jesus overstating. Obviously, that is not literally true. Many soldiers have died of old age. Jesus constantly overstated for the sake of impact at the expense of accuracy, and I find that to be the mark of a religious extremist, not a representative of God or even a wise person. The point of criticism.
I understand you don't have to think exactly the way I do, but if you completely try to tear down everything, we say, how are you going to?
Yeah, because that's a good question, but that's exactly the process. If I examine 20 religions, it's my duty to try to tear every one of them down. and the one that holds up the best is the best one. It would be a waste of my time to say how good I think your good teachings are, or what discuss the good things in the Bible. Yeah, it sort of becomes necessary for me to be critical. Yeah, because I assume from what you're saying that you feel I'm starting to try to criticize.
Like we were trying to be honest and tell what we believe, and
then I criticize it, but the criticism is there though. That's the thing.
Basically, we do want to spend our time helping people to know God, and that's what we want to do. We're really not interested in debating, or this gets knocked down on every little tiny thing. And instead of looking at the beautiful positives, but like say you find, I found this verse here and I found this verse here, and they don't mix. Boom, 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 boom.
The Book of God should hold up to that. It should hold up to that.
Predictions of the end. The Jehovah's Witnesses expect Armageddon very soon, where the current system of things is destroyed by God, and only God's people, the Jehovah's Witnesses, continue to live here on earth in a paradise restored.
We're seeing things right before our eyes develop.
But I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen. 50 years from now, Jehovah's Witnesses are still going to be here, and they're going to come up with some rationalization as to why it didn't happen yet.
But
and then 50 more years, they're going to go by and they'll come up with another rationalization. But if your organization had predicted the end of the world in 1914, and also predicted it in World War II, and was wrong both times, doesn't that mean that your organization is not divine?
That was members within the organization. That wasn't the organization as a whole. That was just members in the organization that were saying that it was going to come.
Right,
They were expecting it. They knew that 1914 was a marked year, and some were hoping, that's going to be the end. It's like...
But wasn't it written in the Watchtower book, or I'll Wait, or whatever?
These are things we believe are going to happen, but we do not say that we know it all, or that we have absolute authority.
But you do. You say what the Watchtower claims to be the voice of God.
But I definitely. Then maybe in other articles they would sound pretty strong, but I definitely read these hedges.
Now, tell me if this sounds like it's some people who think so, or whether it sounds, this is straightforward declaration. This is from an 1894 Watchtower.
100 years ago.
100 years ago, and what? And therefore it doesn't count?
We see no reason for changing the figures, nor could we change them if we could, or if we would. They are, we believe, God's dates, not ours. But bear in mind that the end of 1914 is not the date for the beginning, but for the end of the time of trouble. We see no reason for changing from our opinion expressed in the view presented in the Watchtower of January the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you do what so many groups do. You make a prediction, doesn't come true, you change it around, and then you ignore your original claims. So to me, that's an example of why...
It's just a thing. Okay, look at it from my personal viewpoint. Okay. You look at the world, right? Mm-hmm. It's obviously in a mess.
Okay.
So you'd like to do something to see the world better.
Okay.
So you wonder, well, what can I do? And then, so I know how I felt then. I mean, I wasn't about to commit suicide, but you have kind of a discouraged type state. Mm-hmm. And, just as a person, I know who cared enough to come and knock on my door. These other groups did not care enough to do that, and were willing to work with me back from an atheistic state. Were willing to treat me as an individual, not just maybe something on TV or on the radio. Just you got to believe in the Lord. But how could I believe in Him if I wasn't even sure there was a God at the time? And I just know who cared enough to come and do that. And so like these folks can knock and find this little error and this mistake here, and tear it apart. But just looking at the big picture, I know who cared. I just see negativism there. I don't see anybody giving me a hope. There's no hope there. I mean, obviously, we write negative things about other religions as well, but I mean that's not the main message.
No,
I
always
is a positive.
Yeah, no, I make that. I mean, I recognize that very clearly. At all these churches and ministers I talk to and so forth, I applaud your commitment and your motivation and everything. But what I'm interested in is, does the theological framework of it make sense or not?
Vaccination and the Watchtower's claim of divine guidance.
Yeah, but in the vaccination thing, I think this is interesting for me because I went to school with Jonas Salk's son, the Salk vaccine. I think the year before he invented that, some 50,000 people died of it, and the year after, only 5,000, and then the couple years after that, only 1,000 because of his vaccine. But as I understand this book, you people were against vaccinations, so you would have been responsible for the deaths of all those people.
Actually, they changed their policy in 1952, a few years before Salk's vaccine came out in 1955. But I wonder how many people died unnecessarily from other diseases, like measles or smallpox, because of their original policy against vaccination.
The Watchtower has never claimed to be inspired.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Here's a challenge. Never claimed to be inspired. God gave Brother Russell to the church to be as a mouthpiece for him. And those who claim to have learned the truth apart from Brother Russell and his writings have been manifested by the Lord as deceivers. So God gave Brother Russell to the church to be as a mouthpiece for him. The Watchtower, 1922, September 15. That's pretty clear to me.
Okay. But
So
where does it say inspired, though?
if he's
In other
God's
words,
mouthpiece,
in other words,
yeah,
okay,
close
but he
enough.
was given as a leader, someone who could guide us, help to guide us.
So he's a mouthpiece, but not an infallible spokesman. No.
Right.
I understand, for example, that Martin Luther King can legitimately be considered a mouthpiece or spokesperson for God for the good principles he preached, yet could still be fallible in other areas of his life. Okay, that's a legitimate position. But if you make a direct public claim of being God's mouthpiece as an institution, then your basic religious pronouncements need to be correct, not incorrect or reversible. And the Watchtower has never claimed to be inspired. In the Watchtower, April 1919, the organization refers to itself as, quote, the one and only channel which the Lord has used in dispensing his truth continually. Note the word continually. In the Watchtower, 1969, January 15, page 51, the Watchtower organization refers to itself as God's channel of communication. In the Watchtower, July 1st, 1973, page 402, says, quote, that Jehovah's organization alone in all the earth is directed by God's Holy Spirit. That sounds like a claim of divine inspiration to me. And to argue that an organization can be divinely inspired, yet occasionally, if not frequently, make major mistakes in policy reversals, sabotages any meaningful concept of divine inspiration. That's the same ploy the Catholic Church uses. It presents itself as divinely guided, but at the very same time claims the right to excuse itself across the board for any less than divine performance, like running the Inquisition or allowing child molestation. Under those slack standards, practically any organization can claim divine inspiration with equal legitimacy, which is to say really no legitimacy at all. The Bible's discrimination against the handicapped.
But it doesn't. That person hasn't taken the time to actually study.
So your position is if you take the time to study it, then gradually you'll get to see the wisdom of all these things.
Exactly.
Because I have taken the time, I have studied it, and I've seen the lack of wisdom in so many things. There's a thing about not letting handicapped people into the congregation of the Lord. That's just plain.
That was in ancient Israel now.
Yeah, so it was right back then?
It was for a certain reason. I mean, because those who were going to care for the temple in the tabernacle had to be able-bodied because of the tasks that were at hand. They couldn't be handicapped and perform these same tasks.
Why not?
They couldn't. They
See what you're doing. You're talking as you're saying, well, handicapped people can't do this and they can't do that.
I'm handicapped, so I know.
Right.
I know what
so
my limitations are.
Yeah. So should you be? All right. Well, good example. Should you be prohibited from entering the congregation of the Lord?
If I was back in ancient Israel, yes.
And you think that's
not entering the
or
you could
approaching the altar? I think is one of the phrases it uses.
Yeah, but in other words, they couldn't perform priestly functions.
Why not? Why couldn't you?
Because the priest had they had an organization, whereas they performed 24 different functions, and they would do this, and they would rotate these functions, so that when you rotate it and I get to a function that I can't perform, then I don't qualify.
Well, then one of the other guys
so it was a protection to me, because now, see, sometimes I do things that I'm not supposed to do. I'll lift something that I shouldn't, and I pay for it for a couple of days. Okay, if I was in ancient Israel, might I do that? Yeah, probably, and hurt myself, and be laid up for. So it was a protection for me. Don't put Jim in there because Jim can't do this.
So.
Well,
I don't. It mentions a number. A person is a hunchback, or a person is one eye blind, or whatever. It's just plain discrimination.
And it's really not a big thing. I mean, it's not a big thing.
It's a big thing.
It's not a big thing. It's a big thing to you,
yeah.
And you're not handicapped.
Yeah, I'm the bus
driver. It's not a big thing to me, and I am.
Well, all right, I'm the bus driver, and I'm saying, oh, you're handicapped. Get in the back of the bus. Is that going to be a big thing, or you just say, no problem?
As long as you give me the time to get down to the end, I'll go.
Oh, see, I wouldn't go. I would say something's wrong here,
yeah,
and I would go back to you and say, what are you doing? You're letting this person abuse you. There's no reason why you should sit in the back of the bus. You know, I mean, if there's a good reason, fine. You know, I mean, you don't want. I don't know if there's some reason that if you're handicapped and you need to sit in the back in order to be able to get out easier or something like that. That makes some sense. But just because you're handicapped, to make you a second-class citizen.
Now, if this handicapped person couldn't perform certain duties at that time, it does not,
Well, it's not presented that way. It's not presented as well that's because a person with no legs will not be able to carry such and such. It doesn't say that. All right, so you're saying...
So if you have to explain every little detail all the time, or defend every little detail...
Well, these aren't little details. These are major issues of human rights.
There is nothing at all mentioned about being physically unable to perform certain duties. Rather, a spiritual offense is implied. Note the phrase in verse 23, lest he profane my sanctuaries, and the concept of he shall not go near the altar. That, in my book, is not an all-wise, loving God, but an anthropomorphic, primitive, petty God. Do I believe in Jesus?
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You believe in Jesus?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No, I don't.
Okay, forget it. That white's on everything.
It does.
That white's on everything.
I know, that's the whole starting point, yeah.
So,
I mean, I used to for many years, but I concluded that he's wrong.
You believe there was somebody like him?
Oh, I believe that he existed, and there was somebody like him, and
he gave up his life?
Largely, the Bible reflects, for the most part, what he actually probably was. And I don't know if that is right or he was right.
You believe he died, though, the way...
I believe he died, but he didn't die for things people say he died for. I don't think he died for... He doesn't got nothing to do with my sins. I'm responsible for my sins.
So he was a complete idiot.
He's a misguided religious leader, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but this is good. Clarified a lot of things, and get your viewpoint across.
So in your book, you're not going to have anything positive about us, then, right?
Oh, no, that's not true. I will say some positive things. But I'll try to make it, I'll try to be fair.
I had self-published several books based on all these conversations I had in the 90s, but the books went nowhere, so now I concentrate on YouTube as a way of getting my ideas out. As I've pointed out before, I don't usually fault a believer's personal morality. Both of these guys seem like really decent guys. I fault their theology. What one of them said about the support and caring he received from the Jehovah's Witnesses is very important. I personally know a Jehovah's Witness who suffered through the death of his wife to cancer, and his fellow witnesses were there to give him the support he needed to get through it. That counts for a lot. It counts for a lot. I think people's decisions about religion often have much more to do with emotional support, rather than with any intrinsic rationality to their belief system. But, myself, I want to know as best I can what's actually true. Jamie and Doug. People, usually atheists, will sometimes criticize me for not taking a hard enough line against religious people. But I think they don't appreciate the fact that most often I've solicited the believer's time, and I carry on these discussions at their church or sometimes even at their homes as their guest. So I don't want to be too antagonistic. I try my best to see their point of view, but at the same time, I try my best to be firm and to properly press issues. One day a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses came to my house, and since for a change they were soliciting my time instead of my soliciting their time, I felt more free to present my criticisms right off the bat, instead of my usual approach of gradually working my way from congenial discussion to criticism. What I find wrong about the Jehovah's Witnesses' religion.
These would be the issues that keep me from being a Jehovah's Witness. One, I don't see why birthdays and holidays can't be celebrated. I don't think pacifism is a valid philosophy. I think the Bible is full of contradictions and immorality and is therefore not the Word of God. So I'm not a Christian. Now, aside from my non-belief in the Bible, I think the Jehovah's Witness interpretations of the Bible are distorted. You say that Jesus is not God, but I think biblically he is. You say there's no fiery hell. I think biblically there is. You say Jesus was not bodily resurrected. I think biblically he was. You don't believe humans continue as spiritual souls right after death, but I think biblically they do. You say Jesus was crucified on a stake. I think biblically it was a cross. Then the Watchtower organization has predicted the end of the world several times, but it hasn't happened. You've made other predictions which haven't come true. You've reversed your position on several issues. You prohibit blood transfusions, and I don't see any valid reason for that. And that's, I think, is a terrible thing because people die unnecessarily. And from what I read, the New World Translation translators were not competent scholars, even though people since then may be. And lastly, you discourage contact or reading of literature of other religions. So I view you as a group that tries to keep everybody thinking the same way, and you don't encourage any independent thinking.
Oh, okay.
So those are my reasons why I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. I would say that the Watchtower organization has contradicted itself a lot. Prediction about end times coming. 1975 was supposed to happen and it didn't happen. So isn't that proof that they're wrong and don't
Proof
represent
that the Watchtower organization can be wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
The Watchtower organization has never claimed to be inspired
Yes,
by
it has.
God.
Oh, yes, it has.
No, I haven't.
It hasn't? All right, so you're both claiming it hasn't. All right, let's see.
It has said that God has used them as a source, as a faithful and discreet slave, but not inspired. Men are imperfect. God's perfect. Men are imperfect. The Watchtower organization may be used by God, but it's not perfect.
It's used by God, but it can make mistakes. The same thing goes with the Catholic Church. They're claiming divine guidance, but then when they make a mistake like Galileo, then all of a sudden, well, we're human beings. So how can you have it both ways? Let me read you this from the Watchtower in 1993. Is not the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society the one and only channel which the Lord has used in dispensing His truth continually since the beginning of the harvest period? Unquote. But it
doesn't say they're infallible. It says
they're dispensing the Lord's truth, but they're not infallible. See that's a contradiction.
Well,
you can't predict the end of the world and be wrong and then still claim to be representing God.
No, and the first century Christians too
were divinely
guided, but had wrong expectations.
Well, then they weren't divinely guided. That proves my point.
Scientific foreknowledge.
Have you ever tried to just prove the Bible true?
To prove it true?
To prove it true. To try to find things that no human book could do, and try to find that in the Bible.
Yeah, that's what you don't find. You don't find scientific foreknowledge there. It's
what
just the opposite.
About where Isaiah speaks about the circle of the earth?
There's a perfect example.
That was before they knew that the earth was spherical. They still thought it was flat. Scientifically accurate there.
That's the circle of the earth. That means the compass of the earth.
No,
it doesn't mean
the word there is sphere. The word there.
No, it isn't. No, it's not. It's not. That's not. There's another Hebrew word for ball, and you would have used ball if it meant sphere. But it doesn't. It uses the one that means circle or compass. The main meaning is compass, like the view all around.
The Jehovah's Witnesses are trained to think that accepting what they're told is a prime virtue. But I think a more objective look at this passage yields no scientific foreknowledge at all. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that passage uses this Hebrew word, which means circle or ring. It does not use this Hebrew word, which means sphere or ball. Furthermore, that verse continues with, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. A tent covers a flat surface, not a globe, which, if covered by a tent, would have its undersides not covered. We touched upon the ostrich, which the biblical God badly mischaracterizes as uncaring for her young.
Let me just see.
Yeah, my contention on the ostrich thing is that ostriches are good parents, and the Bible's wrong.
Right.
Therefore, the Bible is not divinely inspired.
If an animal attacks an ostrich's nest,
Yeah.
now you see, this is like the Bible is my primary study. I do study a lot about animals because I'm fascinated by them. I've actually been studying animals longer than I've been studying the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
An ostrich will abandon its nest and allow the animal to take the young. It will not fight for the young. That's the point that the book is making.
The 1914 generation. Since World War I, the Jehovah's Witnesses have been predicting the end of the world would occur before that World War I generation passes on. But those people were getting older and older and dying out. So by the mid-90s, the Watchtower had to do some serious tap dancing. In 1995, they dropped their specific 1914 generation claim.
Has it been publicized, or are you aware of your organization's change in your policy about the 1914 generation?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so now the 1914 generation is irrelevant?
No.
There's just a different understanding about that generation. Like the generation, instead of it pointing to a people, say, born within a certain period of time,
Yeah.
it's just talking about the group of people, the attitudes. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses were getting themselves into the mind frame that we could use the generation as kind of being a gauge as to when the end of the system would come.
Right.
And now the
Exactly.
society is
In a
coming
number of
out and
years.
saying there's no way we can do that because that's not what it means by generation.
Yeah, but you said an interesting thing there. The previous position was a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. The current position is your organization.
Mhm.
But that's
Oh, no,
not
the
accurate.
organization had
The
said-
organization said that.
The organization that said that. There isn't a religion in the world who hasn't changed their views on anything now.
Well, then that means none of them are right.
No.
None of them are divinely inspired.
No, it
You
just
can't be-
means that because even God himself said to King David that the truth would come progressively.
Citing Proverbs 4:18 is the standard response for the Jehovah's Witnesses when they're caught in a contradiction or a reversal of policy. This is a clever all-purpose dodge that Christians use, invoking progressive revelation to explain away bad ideas which they have been forced to finally admit are actually bad ideas, like killing witches or sacrificing animals or slaughtering neighboring tribes and so on.
What about the apostles? They had to be changed too.
The Christian congregation
They
felt
had
as though
errors.
the end of the world was coming at their time, the early Christians.
Yes, so that means they're wrong. That means they're not divinely
That
inspired.
means-
They're not
No,
speaking for
that
God.
We're not-
Humans are not perfect.
Okay,
Doesn't mean God changed.
and okay, maybe
Humans
you're
can
thinking
incorrectly
that-
understand something in their enthusiasm.
Yeah, but can the Watchtower organization give wrong guidance?
sure. Maybe you're
Then-
thinking that we claim to be divinely inspired as
Yes.
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes.
We do not.
As an organization, you
As
do.
an organization, we have never claimed to be divinely
All
inspired.
right.
As God's channel, they claim, yes. But not
Well,
as
what's the
divinely-
difference there? That's the same thing.
No, there's a difference.
God's channel, who is
used by
often
God.
incorrect.
No, God's channel. I think God was using the apostles, but they were incorrect.
So why would I give my allegiance to an organization that's going to be incorrect any more than I would believe in the Catholic Church? If they're going to say wrong things, I'm not going to. To me, they're not divinely guided.
What organization is striving
To meet God's
to
requirements.
meet God's
That's what
requirements,
we-
right?
Well, the Mormons think they are, and the Catholics think they are. You think you are.
Well,
The
yeah,
decisions
but,
up
I
to
think
you.
I am.
okay,
The decisions
but you
up
see,
to
it would be proven by their works.
Proven by their works. Okay, the Inquisition rules out the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
If you didn't know, there's a long history of antagonism between the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Catholic Church.
Period.
Even though we weren't around in 1914, we're considered to be part of the generation.
Well, if you're here when the end comes, it's whatever generation sees these events before the end comes.
Right.
So, in other words, it's like a meaningless prediction. It's just there's
We-
no specific prophecy to it at
There's
all.
Saying
no-
that this,
but
the
even-
wicked generation attitude now
Yeah.
will not pass away before God's judgment.
So this doesn't make sense. It's like the generation that sees the end will see the end. Is basically what it's saying.
Do you believe God used the Jewish people? Do you believe He used
not at
them?
all.
See?
I think that's
Do you believe He
See,
used the apostles?
No. See,
See,
God is
that's-
fair. God doesn't pick one group of people and say, this is my people. These are the chosen people. I don't think that's not God. That's people choosing themselves.
No. Well, I know we differ. Like I said,
Uh.
you know, we'll find out.